This section is on functions. A function is a rule that assigns to each element x exactly one element f of x, or y. The x values are the input of the function and are called the independent variable. The y values, or the f of x values, are the output of the function and are called the dependent variable. So functions can be used to express many things that we've already looked at, like equations, graphs, tables, and ordered pairs. So all of these things can be defined as functions. The domain of a function is all of the x values that work in the function, or the x values where the function is defined. The range of a function is all of the y values, or f of x values, where the function is defined. And a relation is a set of ordered pairs that has the potential to be a function. Number 1 says to find the domain and range of the following relations, then determine if the relation is a function. So this chapter is dealing with functions as equations, graphs, tables, and these are specifically ordered pairs. So the domain, that is going to be all of my x values here. So my domain is going to be -2, 3, 5, and then the -2, even though it occurs again, I'm only going to write it once in my domain. For my range, this is all of the y values. So I'm going to write this in ascending order. You really wouldn't have to, but I guess traditionally that's kind of how it's done. So -7, then 5, 6, and 10. So that's the domain, which is all the x values, the range, which is all the y values. To figure out if it's a function or not, the traditional way is to create a mapping between the domain and the range. So I'm going to list these numbers here. And then I'm going to map the x values to their corresponding y values. So -2 corresponds to -7, -2 corresponds to 5, 3 corresponds to 6, and 5 corresponds to 10. And the issue that we have here is that -2 is corresponding to two different numbers. And you can't have that because a function is a rule that assigns to each element x exactly one element f of x or y. So this would not be a function because of that. Moving on to number 2, my domain is going to be 0, 2, 4, and 6. My range is 3, 5, and 7. So if I create my mapping, zero, 2, 4, and 6, 3, 5, and 7. 0 gets mapped to 3, 2 gets mapped to 5, 4 gets mapped to 7, and 6 gets mapped to 3. Now you'll notice that 3 is getting mapped to two different numbers, but that's okay because it's a y value, it's in the range. So the only issue that you need to look at when deciding if it's a function or not is there any x value that's getting mapped to two different values, or is there two lines going to any number in the domain or in the x values? And there's not. So this would be a function. And then lastly, looking at number 5, which is a table, it says determine if the relation expressed as a table is a function. So these are actually the same numbers as number 1. They're just expressing it as a table. So it's like this is our x values, these are our y values. So you may see it expressed like this. And it's really the same mapping because it's the same numbers as number 1. But I'm going to do it anyway. So you'll see that -2 gets mapped to -7 and to 5. It doesn't quite look like it's going to 5. And my eraser's too big. You'll see that I do make mistakes on these videos. There, that looks nicer. So no, this is not a function because -2 does get mapped to 2 different numbers.